there are some conferences that are tougher than others, and there are some that are incredibly stacked this season. So what are the toughest, the most stacked conferences this upcoming college wrestling season? And before we get into that, I want to tell you that this segment is actually brought to you by the Fanco 2022 NCAA preseason guide, which is coming soon. So at a glance, there are 7 conferences in college wrestling, NCAA champions from 4 conferences. So every single NCAA champion last year came from 4 conferences, and every NCAA champion last year, NCAA finalist, came from one of 5 different conferences. So interesting to note there, just some quick stats right off the bat for you. The MAC is the only conference that I'm not going to be talking about, that actually had a finalist. He had 1 finalist last year compared to these other conferences. So what's their criteria for the most stacked conference? I looked at the number of ranked wrestlers by Intermat, how many guys are ranked, the number of All-Americans, the number of NCAA champs and finalists, the team rankings, which are brought to you by Fanco Wrestling, in the 2022 projections for this upcoming season. So with that said, who are the most stacked conferences? And I'll tell you, I had a little bit of a tough time. You probably know who's at number 1. I mean, but do you? I mean, do you? Yeah, you know. But who's at number 2, 3, and 4? Okay. First is the honorable mention, and that's the Pac-12. Now, why is the Pac-12 so stacked? And I struggled so much putting them as an honorable mention because I thought they should be in the top 3, but they just aren't quite there yet. They have some serious competition, Arizona State does. I mean, the Pac-12 does, with Arizona State, with Stanford, with Oregon State, with Cal Poly. Pac-12 is more stacked than ever before. Just not quite enough to get into that top 3. Now, when I talk about this, they have 3 teams in Fanco's top 20, which I'll be sharing with you at a later time. They have 27 guys ranked in the top 33 and 11 in the top 8. And actually, they have more guys ranked in the top 8 per team on average than Big 12, and actually even than most other conferences, based on the number of teams in the conference. So, of course, like the Big 10, the Big 12, and EIWA is going to have more guys ranked because there are more teams than the Pac-12 or than the ACC. So if you kind of understand what I'm saying there. But the tough teams with Arizona State and Stanford and Oregon State, Arizona State's projected to finish top 5 at the NCAAs this year. Oregon State has some great transfers, one in particular, Gary Trubb, who I think is going to help them out tremendously this year. They have 8 guys ranked. And then Cal Poly is another team that I want to mention with a great transfer in Evan Wick. They also have Bernie Truow, who's going to be helping them out phenomenally. And I think that's great that the Pac-12 is finally gaining some real competition. Stanford, too, I think there's just going to be a lot of eyes on Stanford this year with Real Woods, Gene Abis, and Shane Griffith, of course, coming back, the NCAA champion coming back this season. Super psyched to see that. But let's get into the top 3. And before I get into the top 3, okay, let me tease you for a second, because this segment, like I said at the beginning, is brought to you by the Fanco Wrestling NCAA Preview Guide. This is going to be your ultimate guide to the D1 wrestling season that'll be available right before the season kicks off. This is everything you need to go heading into the upcoming season. So which transfers are going to affect this season? Who has the longest dual win streaks? Quick facts on the top teams in the NCAA, some of those top 25 teams, and you're going to be able to be the first to know when this guide drops just by pre-ordering the guide today. You can pre-order for free at the link down in the description. That'll take you right there. Go ahead and pre-order that, and that'll take you right there. And I know that there's just so much great information in this that you're going to enjoy. So the top 3, Big 12. Big 12 is number 3. And I moved them at the last second, but there's a reason for it. They're stacked. They have 2 NCAA champs coming back with AJ Ferrari, with David Carr. Mizzou now back in the Big 12. Super psyched for that. And I wavered with them just based on the team competition. I think that the team competition in the Big 12 is just a little bit less than the number 2 team. Now, they have 4 teams in the top 20, 2 in the top 5. So Oklahoma State and Mizzou in the top 5, impressive, right? They have 75 guys ranked in the top 33, 15 guys in the top 8 across every single team. 2 NCAA champs, 3 finalists return for this upcoming season. The top teams, of course, as I already said, Okie State, Mizzou. There's also Oklahoma. There's also Wyoming. There's also Iowa State, who I think will give some healthy competition. But in general, it's a 2-team race. It's a 2-horse race. And that's why Big 12 is stacked. They're super stacked, but not quite as stacked, to be honest with you, as the ACC. The ACC, yeah, I get it. It's also a two-horse race, really, with Virginia Tech and NC State. But I think that Pitt and North Carolina can really pull their weight this season, even more than some of those teams in the Big 12. Now, granted, like Virginia, Duke, no, they're not necessarily in the conversation. I get that. But 4 teams are in the top 20. And the ACC has jumped up and had more competitive seasons than many of the other teams, many of the other conferences, to be honest with you. I mean, I've enjoyed ACC wrestling more than Big 12 recently. And at times, even more than Big 10. Just because of how fun that rivalry is between NC State and Virginia Tech. So the tough teams, yeah, those guys are tough. And interestingly enough, Virginia Tech also has some really tough guys coming back. And even though like Latona didn't make the finals like he was supposed to, I still think that he can. Mekhi Lewis is an NCAA champion, was an NCAA champion, and is coming back this season. I think he's going to do well. Pitt, UNC, and NC State, they all put guys in the finals last year. How impressive is that? That's like more teams putting guys in the finals than most other conferences, besides the Big 10. And yes, the most stacked weight, is the Big 10. I mean, you knew that. You knew it was going to be the Big 10, but why? So I think that's important to know, yes, Big 10 is stacked, but what makes them so stacked? So they have 8 teams right now in Fanco's top 20. 8 teams. More than any other conference. They have 95 guys ranked in the top 33 by Intermat currently. 95 guys. Across 14 teams, okay, 35 in the top 8. Now, a lot of those guys, yes, granted, are from just a couple of the teams, right? They're from Penn State. They're from Iowa, who has all their guys ranked. So, yeah, I get it. But on average, there are a lot of ranked guys per team in the Big 10. They put 6 guys on top of the podium last year. The Big 10 did 10 NCAA finals. So half of NCAA finals last year were from the Big 10. And almost all of them were able to win it. That would have been, imagine if the Big 10 won every single way. That would be crazy. And yeah, this is also a top race with Penn State and Iowa, but Michigan is also here in the conversation this year. And don't forget about Ohio State, Nebraska, or Rutgers, who are also going to be battling. And if you're looking for rankings for every single conference before the season gets here, you're going to want to check out this resource right here. This will take you to a page where you can download my Fanco Wrestling rankings for free. That's all 78 D1 teams, every single conference, whether you support Big 10, Pac-12, ACC, you're going to get little tidbits of information and the rankings you need to know before the season gets here. You can check that out for free right here.